information, if what I just said is correct, you don't recall your access being revoked, and then you wouldn't know why your access was revoked?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you believe Greene's death was a result of a vehicle crash?
I did not investigation.
Okay. Well, based on your position with the state police, would you find it unusual to have an in-custody death purportedly from a fatality crash and not have a reconstruction of the scene or photos or a crash diagram or the vehicle CDR? Would all of that strike you odd based upon your experience?
It's my understanding that any in-custody death would result in a full criminal investigation. So some of the things you just mentioned, I would expect that those would have been at least reviewed, considered, and done if appropriate.
And unusual if they don't exist, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Bilio. I want to follow up on some of the questions you asked. In the staff meeting, you said it was discussed in the staff meeting. Who brought up the discussion in the staff meeting?
The discussion was initiated regarding there being information leaks on the case. I believe it was by Colonel Reeves.
Okay. So Colonel Reeves brought up the discussion, hey, we have a leak. Is that kind of what happened?
Yes, sir.
And then there was a discussion. I'm sure the follow-up was, well, how do we handle the leak, right?
The discussion was how do we protect the integrity of the information in the case.
Right. I think we're saying the same thing, just different semantics. And what was the outcome of that discussion? What was the final resolution of how you're going to handle the integrity of the information?
That we were going to look at the logs when I noticed the videos were not locked. We had a discussion about that, and it was a decision was made to lock the cases.
Okay. So that meeting...
In Axon, the date, there should be a complete log of when that was done and when those were locked.
Then, let's go back to something else you said. You said you then... So nobody told you go out there and make sure it's not on the shared drive. Nobody said that in the meeting?
No, sir.
And you just decided that you need to do that on your own?
When I discussed it with Lieutenant Marana, they had been in the past storing working copies of videos, and I told him we didn't need to be storing this one there. It was multiple investigations going on.
Right, but the video was on the S drive at this point.
You know what? I do not know for sure if it was or wasn't, but I asked him not to store it there.
Okay. I mean, I think not to store it there is sort of the same thing as if it's there, delete it.
Yes, sir. And just for a point of clarification, we're asking to delete a working copy of something that the official evidence is the Axon.
Sure, I understand.
Yes, sir.
And did you explain to Lieutenant Moran why you were making this request?
I did. I told him there was active investigations and it needed to be protected.
Okay. Representative Bacala.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Barnum, you mentioned senior staff meetings, and I think you did kind of review who participated, but would you tell me again on a how often were senior staff meetings held?
We normally had senior staff meetings every Monday.
Okay, and who typically would be a participant in the senior staff meetings?
The colonel, the chief of staff, the lieutenant colonels, and legal, and we would also have briefings from CID or even public affairs from time to time, or any other matter that needed to be presented to the senior staff.
Okay, just and if you would you said colonels, lieutenant colonels. Could you actually give me a list of names of who would typically be involved in those meetings?
So the last account of senior staff when I was there was Colonel Davis, but before that was Colonel Reeves, Colonel Brown, Colonel White, Colonel Oliphant, myself, Colonel Starnes, Office of Legal Affairs, Ms. Faye Morrison.
Okay, and so every Monday you guys would gather to, what would, if you would, just kind of describe a typical meeting.
We would just go around the room and bring up issues that needed to be discussed or addressed, situational awareness.
Okay, and could you give me some examples of what that might have been?
From my side, it was condition of cars, equipment, guns, training.
Okay.
And then each section staff would have an opportunity to address issues.
Okay, and in regards, because this is relative to the Ronald Greene investigation, within the senior staff, who would have been the individual who, if there had been briefings, who would have done the briefing on that?
Sometimes the captain or the major from CID would come in and do those briefings.
All right, so, and who would that captain from CID, or who would they report to? Who would be their senior staff member within the meeting?
The senior staff of investigations was Colonel White. The senior
Okay.
staff of Lieutenant Colonel of Patrol was Colonel Oliphant.
All right, and would you say that you attended all of the meetings, most of the meetings?
Every time I was there, I would have.
So if you weren't on vacation or something, you were in the meeting. How often? That's often may be the wrong word, but how many times was Ronald Greene's case mentioned in some form or fashion during those meetings?
I don't ever recall there being a briefing on the Ronald Greene case other than when we got to disciplinary review.
And when did you get to disciplinary review?
And that's what I was explaining earlier. I'm at a loss with the time on that. I do not remember the
That's
dates
when you.
of
So that year that we referred to, about a year later, that time frame. That's when you guys would have been. That's when you would have discussed in the senior staff meeting, and you don't recall any other discussion in that 1 year time frame?
I do not know, sir.
What would you, looking back, what would you infer from the fact that there was never a briefing on the Ronald Greene case?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, would your inference be it was? I'm saying looking back. So I'm not asking you to think what you would have thought at the time.
Yes, sir.
But looking back, would you have made the assumption that there was nothing to report?
That it was being investigated and handled by CID and coordination with the district attorney's office is what I would assume.
Would you find it? Would you not find it unusual that no one asked in a senior staff meeting for updates on the Ronald Greene investigation if it was an active investigation?
We didn't cover all investigations, and frankly, I don't even know when I became aware there was an investigation. It wasn't up till around the time there were some leaks and some discussions on the.
So apparently it became Ronald Greene incident investigation really didn't get any attention in senior staff meetings until there was a leak.
I do not recall any discussions about Ronald Greene.
Until there was a leak?
Yes, sir. That's when I first recall having the discussions about it. They could have been discussing a case. I didn't know names on cases.
Okay, so if it was discussed, it didn't something that you recall, one way or the other. I mean, this wasn't part of your oversight.
Yes, sir, and it wasn't something that raised to the level where,
Do you recall other investigations that were discussed in great detail or no detail? Was it typical that you guys would discuss disciplinary matters or criminal investigations within those meetings?
I don't recall us getting down really into the details of cases. The briefings were brief at best. that chain of command would have known the details of the cases.
But they wouldn't have been shared typically. I mean, nobody ever
Not
said
at-
what's
not-
going on with this case or that case, or what can you tell me? Can you give me an update on?
Not that I recall, and I do not remember cases being discussed in depth at staff meetings.
Do you recall cases being discussed in staff meetings, even if they weren't in depth? I'm just trying to get a feel for it. I'm not trying to
No, I
cross-examine you here. I'm just trying to get a feel for
appreciate
what a
it,
staff
and I'm
meeting
trying
would have
to-
looked like.
Yes, sir, and I'm trying to give my account for, there was discussions on cases, status of cases. A lot of times it was new cases that had just arrived. Hey, there was an officer-involved shooting here, such and such teams working, that type of deal.
Okay, now let's go back. You know, you were part of the disciplinary review process, right?
Yes, sir.
At what point, we have, I guess, concurrent criminal investigation that's in disciplinary investigations going on, or internal investigations, violation of policy and violation of law, taking two different tracks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there an internal investigation initiated in this case?
Yes, sir.
When was that investigation initiated?
I do not know the dates on that, but it was later. Late. I won't say late, but she asked me earlier, Representative did, like a year later, it seemed like.
So there was no internal investigation authorized, launched, or whatever for a year?
Typically, the criminal cases run before the internal affairs cases.
Is that by policy? I mean, why do you allow? This is not a question for you, but is it the norm that an internal affairs case is put on hold while a criminal investigation is ongoing?
That's been my experience over the years, yes, sir.
Okay, I guess we could. I have an opinion about that, and I would ask if you share my opinion, which is that the two are independent. And investigating a case for a legal violation is different than investigating a case for a policy violation. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Different standards.
Yes, sir.
And the fact that they should have been going on concurrently, there really shouldn't be this is my opinion, I'm only stating, and I hope you will share yours. My opinion is that you should not have to wait to review policy violations until criminal violations are cleared.
Yes, sir. And there, nationwide, there is discussions, better practices. That is one of the things that had been discussed in the past, is when could we start internal affairs cases and not, interrupt or potentially damage the criminal case.
When did y'all have those discussions? During the Greene aftermath? Before that? Has this been going on for years? When should you start? Philosophically?
I don't know if that was before or after.
All right. Okay, I may come back to some more questions, but
Yes, sir.
I'll let somebody else have the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. You do receive, as in your position, the public safety services from Colonel Reeves, right? The monthly report.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, sir.
It's a document. It's called Louisiana Department of Public Safety Services Monthly Report. You received that in your position, didn't you?
I do not recall that. I'd have to see what you're.
Here, I'll hold it up
referring
for
to.
you so you can see what it looks like. There's the front page of it. You received this document. Here, y'all can. Would y'all mind handing it to him? I don't mind. I'm not trying to trick you. I just want to make sure you got what you were supposed to get. It appears to me to be a monthly report that was given to senior staff.
I've seen a report like this. I don't recall getting it regularly, but it looks familiar.
You were emailed a copy of it on that one on April 8th, 2020.
Okay.
And from this just documents the state police have produced, and it says, we've attached a monthly report for public safety services on behalf of Colonel Reeves. The reason why I ask you that is because the report itself, and you can look on the back page of it, it talks about officer-involved shootings and stuff like that. I guess I'm trying to understand, did you just not review these reports, or it seems like the Ronald Greene matter should have been in these reports at some point?
If you're saying I got emailed that, then obviously I did. I do not recall specifically. I've seen reports like this before.
I mean, Ronald Greene's not in this particular one, but I'm just wondering, it seems like these things happen, and y'all do a monthly report of it, and I'm trying to square that with the testimony that you didn't really hear anything about this.
If there was one in there, sir, that circulated, I got it. I don't want to say that I read every single word on that every time. I would be looking for the things that were relevant to me and my position.
I understand. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barnum, again, you were over use of force review, correct?
The use of force review was tasked out to the training division. Yes, ma'am.
So getting back to Representative Bacala, let's just say hypothetically, an officer, and I'll try to be not polite, but careful with my wording. An officer beats the snot out of an arrestee. You're telling me that it was state police's practice to allow that officer to continue working, not do any disciplinary proceedings until such time as there's been a decision outside of state police on criminal charges?
I would ask you to repeat that question, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. My question is, if an officer
Yes, ma'am.
uses excessive force and there is a criminal charge review, that officer is going to be allowed to come to work every day and interact with the public, notwithstanding knowledge that he has used excessive force.
I see. Yes.
Until such time as the criminal charge review is over, and then the state police conducts disciplinary proceedings.
I think in the initial phases of that criminal investigation, if there was indications that there were issues, there could have and should have been discussions about placing an officer on administrative leave.
Okay? So if you're over use of force review, and in August 2019, just several months after Mr. Greene's death, there was discussions with the DA and the DA was going to turn information over to the U.S. Attorney's Office to consider criminal charges. You would not have been aware of that?
I was not aware of that at the time, no, ma'am.
Okay. My last question to you, Mr. Barnum, have you ever asked anyone else, or Lieutenant in Fleet, Chairman of the Accident Review Board, at any time, have you ever asked anyone at any time other than in this one instance to delete videos?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Bacala.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. At one time you were assigned to internal affairs, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think was that the position you held immediately prior to disciplinary review?
Yes, sir.
And when did you when were you promoted to disciplinary review from IA?
So I was promoted to lieutenant colonel over support. One of the functions is to sit on the disciplinary review committee with all.
Okay, when did you leave IA?
I got promoted January of 2018.
Okay, so in January, prior to January 2018, you were in internal affairs. If and again, I'm asking you to just kind of place this case into the time frame where you were with IA. If you had seen the videos that you saw after 28 in the Ronald Greene videos, while you were part of the internal affairs unit, would you, knowing everything you know now, because you'd have known it then, all right? So if you had all the facts and circumstances available at your hands and you're part of internal affairs investigation, looking at the facts that you know today, would you have found that this case warranted disciplinary action?
In my opinion, would have warranted discussions of consideration on placing officers on admin leave until such time that the criminal and administrative cases could have been worked.
So you're saying that let's put all these people on leave till we finish the criminal investigation?
You know, that is an option, yes, sir. I'm not saying that would be an automatic option. I'm saying that would be up for discussion regarding the people responsible for doing the investigations, both IA and.
And when you say up for discussion, I mean, you're talking about like, okay, let's run it up the chain, that kind of discussion?
Yeah, we would discuss it in a senior staff meeting.
All right, so that would have been something you'd have said, okay, this IA warrants senior staff discussion. You'd have brought it before senior staff, and the decision would have been made about what action should have been taken.
Yes, sir.
That's that. Okay. The internal affairs, with this investigation, even though that may have been the typical operating procedure, that didn't happen with Ronald Greene, to your recollection. It never came up the chain. It never was IA coming in and said, we need to discuss this.
I do not recall that, no, sir.
Okay. Certainly, you know, I think great deference would have been given to the opinions of the internal affairs investigators, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And as a former internal affairs investigator, you would have brought this case to senior staff or made sure that it had gone to senior staff. Is my overstating that?
Yes, whenever I would have seen it. But there was a criminal case running. At what point in time?
Well, did IA automatically say, okay, we know there's a criminal case, so we're not going to do anything, or would that be a senior staff decision?
That would be a senior staff decision.
If IA was aware of the case and was also aware that there's maybe a criminal investigation, that would have gone to senior staff meetings, and that's where a decision would have been made as per the processes and procedures when you were in IA.
Yes, sir.
Can you, and again, I know it's your recollection, so maybe somebody will come back and say we did talk about it in a senior staff meeting, even though we've asked similar questions and it seems that there never was a discussion in senior staff. Do you find, why do you think there never would have been a discussion in senior staff meetings? Why would I not have ever brought this? You think it would have been because decisions were made outside of the IA meeting, or it just was not on anybody's radar?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, that'd be speculation on your part. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Sorry I missed a lot of your testimony, so I hope I'm not being redundant. I had a committee next door. You are currently retired, is that accurate? When did you retire?
I retired. My last work day was April 30th of last year.
Last year. Were you on the drop, or you just scheduled to retire? You got another job, or what happened?
So I had my time in. I had some prior military service that I purchased, and
I guess I'm asking, when did you make the decision to retire?
I've been thinking about retirement for the past 10 years.
I've been thinking about it too. I've been thinking about it for about 10.
But I still work.
Yes. Okay, so you're working now?
Yes, ma'am.
So you left there, and where are you currently working?
I'm teaching.
You're teaching. Okay. So you were the IA investigator when you left, but not doing
I was a lieutenant colonel over support division.
support division. Okay, and what that division do?
It is the command of all the support elements other than patrol and investigations. So criminal records, crime lab, training, DPS police, Capitol security.
So the criminal records. Would you have been over the body cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
You were. So during this investigation, well, after Ronald Greene was killed, you would have had knowledge of who was viewing those body camera footages and who were not?
So previously I was asked and I explained to...
I'm sorry, I wasn't in
Yes,
here. I'm so
ma'am.
sorry.
So at some point in time, I don't remember the dates, but there was a discussion about case information being leaked out. I went and got the audit logs from
So who was that discussion with? When they said the
Senior
case
staff.
information
senior staff.
specifically?
Colonel Reeves, Colonel Brown,
Colonel Reeves,
White, Colonel Oliphant, myself.
Brown, and so they were concerned that the information was being leaked out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so go ahead, tell me what happened.
So I got the particularly the one of the body cams or one of the videos. I got the audit logs. We looked at those. The videos were not locked, and as part of that discussion, we locked the videos.
Okay, so you have no information on who was leaking information. They didn't tell you that. They just said information is being leaked. We need you to lock them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so that would be why someone who was over use of force, was his name Scott? That would be why he would have said that he could not access the video anymore without permission.
Yeah, once if the videos are locked, it would require a specific request and a specific permission to grant that.
Even though he was investigating the use of force, it was still locked for him. Who wasn't it locked for?
I don't know, ma'am. I'd have to look at the logs.
Okay,
to see.
so would it have just been senior staff that could have gotten into it
I think
without?
internal affairs. There was a couple of global administrators that would be able to grant access.
Okay. So, and one final question, because I don't want to be redundant, and I'm not sure what they actually. I did hear you say the IA investigation. I've heard others come to this table say the IA investigation was going along with the criminal investigation, so that would have caused y'all to stop the IA investigation.
It's my understanding that the IA investigation started later.
Started after the criminal investigation.
Ma'am, not concurrent as Representative Bacala asked me about.
Okay, so do you know when the IA investigation? You
No,
were
ma'am.
gone when that
I
started.
was not in internal affairs, but
Oh.
there should be IA records
Okay.
from that IA case system to show the dates.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. I just have a follow-up, though. I think we talked about the videos, but you also locked up the crash report. Is that correct?
I did, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the crash reports are typically public accessible.
Yes, sir. Well, they're for sale to the public.
Right, accessible.
If-
That's why I use the word accessible.
If you're involved in that crash type of deal or insurance company.
Right. But anybody can go onto the website, State Police's website, pay like the $30 or whatever the fee is.
Have to,
and-
it's my understanding you have to know locations, names, enough to put in to show that you were involved in the case.
Yeah, you have to know the date is really what you need to know. And the parish it happened at. So what was do you normally lock up the crash report as well when there's an IA or criminal investigation? Is that standard?
It was part of the discussion of information that was potentially leaked, of what else could be leaked type of deal while there was ongoing investigations.
I guess my question, though, is if something is accessible to the public, it's not leaked. I mean, anybody who knows the date and time can... Sure, one second, Representative Baclaw. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead, Representative.
I think that statutorily, it's not accessible to the public. It's if you're a party to the accident, and that could be a party, could be someone who's involved, the owner of the car, whoever. It's not accessible to anyone, so it's not a complete public record. And I think that was enacted years ago to keep ambulance chasers from grabbing all the reports and trying to,
No, I do it all the time. In my practice of law, you literally go, you know the date of time, and nobody controls it. You can just click the parish, the date, hit download, pay $30 with your credit card, and then it gives you the report. I can do it for any case I want. I do it all the time.
All right.
So this information is really already quite available to the public. So I guess I'm struggling with the word leaked around a crash report, unless it's the operating procedure that if it's involved in a criminal investigation, that y'all automatically don't provide that report online.
It was my understanding it was part of this investigation, and as subsequent, we locked it.
Right, and I understand that. But I guess my question is, and this is something that's really starting to kind of wear at me, is what are the procedures of state police? Every time we ask y'all a question about procedures, it's like, well, my understanding this time, that time, in this case, we did this. The idea, as my understanding of procedures, is to have a manual that you refer to on how you handle circumstances. That if you do it by the manual, you're doing it, quote unquote, by the book. And when you do it, quote unquote, by the book, it alleviates a lot of these questions that we're having now, because you say, I was doing what we do at state police when we do this. These are our procedures. I was following those things. What's happened, it appears to me, and I could be wrong, and I'm trying to find out, is that y'all are literally have like a committee to decide how you're going to do every action and not following any procedures y'all, and they may exist, and I think they do, but y'all are just you're either ignoring it or you're not enacting it. And I can't figure out which one y'all are doing, and nobody seems to have a working knowledge of the procedures themselves. So my question is, what are the procedures as it relates to a crash report when there's either an IA investigation or a criminal investigation? As a guy who used to be an IA, who can have the authority to call somebody and say, hey, take that off the shared drive, I really feel like you should know that. So can you answer for me, what was the procedure at state police revolving around crash reports if it's related to an accident, related to a criminal or IA investigation? That's my question.
Yes, sir. I am not aware of a specific procedure regarding that. But I can tell you that, and I had the privilege of working with Colonel Davis, we worked tirelessly to institute best practices, guidelines, and try to do our best. And I know, I hear what you're saying. Our agency does a really good job overall. Are there things that we could do better? Certainly. Is there people still trying to make us better? Certainly.
And look, I understand that completely. I'm not trying to drag anybody to the coals. I've said it many times as committee. I have a great admiration and respect for the troopers and all they do. I'm often overwhelmed by the work that they do and the commitment they have to public safety. It's concerning to me, though, that this seems sort of basic, though. IA, criminal report, we have a crash report. How do we handle that crash report? Especially since it's on a public website, accessible, it seems like there should be, when I go click on that crash report as the attorney involved, it would say, this is under investigation, not accessible to the public at this time. It seems like there shouldn't even be that category. If that's your procedure, then it'd be more concerning to me as a member of the public if I know about a crash, I go to get that file and it's just missing with no reason why it's missing. You understand how that would make the public feel like something's been deleted?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. I mean, that's all the questions I have. Is there any other questions for the committee, from the committee? All right. Thank you, Mr. Barn. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir. Here's your document, sir.
Yeah, we'll get somebody to get it for you. Thank you. Next we have on the agenda item, Lieutenant Colonel Adam White. And for the record, it's Robert Adam White. Do you go by Robert or Adam?
That's correct. I go by Adam.
All right. Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. White, what was your position in the state police?
Deputy Superintendent over investigations.
And were you involved in the discussions of Ronald Greene?
Yes.
And when did you become first aware of it?
Best I can recall, it was probably the week after the incident. I believe it was May the 10th the incident occurred. As best I can recall, in the following week, I realized that there was an investigation ongoing on an in-custody death.
Okay. And were you involved in the discussions with Colonel Reeves about how to handle this matter at senior level?
I'm sure I was. I don't recall specifically having a conversation with him about that until maybe the week after that. I was asked to meet in the conference room on the second floor because we were going to be presented video evidence of the case, or video from that incident. And that's the first time we reviewed video, or I reviewed video from that incident.
Okay. And you said you don't recall what date that was?
I don't, but I would say it was within 2 weeks of the incident.
Okay. Do you know which video you saw at that time?
I do. I want to say it was DeMoss's body cam.
Okay. Do you know when you first saw the Clary video?
I never saw a Clary video.
What was your initial reaction to the DeMoss video?
Probably the most shocking video that I'd seen. It was very prejudicial. Shocking to the senses. To the public, it would be astonishing to see what had gone on and hear the language used.
I'm going to turn it over to Representative Marcel for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you retire?
The week before Christmas 2020.
2020. And you were scheduled to retire?
Yes, actually, I wanted to retire before Kevin Reeves, but when he announced his retirement, I didn't feel like I could leave at the same time.
Okay, and you were the deputy director of?
Deputy superintendent. I was a lieutenant colonel, but over the Bureau of Investigation.
Bureau of Investigations. Now, you said something that was interesting to me. You said a few weeks after?
Within a couple of weeks.
Within a couple of weeks.
Yes.
You viewed the body camera of DeMoss's, right?
That's correct.
Body camera. And you said that it was shocking and prejudicial, right?
Yes.
Who viewed that with you?
I'm unsure. It would have been a limited audience, though. I believe Colonel Reeves, Bob Brown, myself, Mike Noel would have been in the room. Other than that, I don't recall specifically. It would have been very limited to the criminal investigation, though. Not, I heard the questioning of Lieutenant Colonel Barnum before. It would not have been shared amongst the senior staff.
So it would not have been, okay.
It would not have.
So you were shocked.
I was.
Can you tell me what the reaction of the others were?
I think everybody was real concerned.
They was concerned.
Yes.
Okay. So in your position, what would have been your next steps?
Well, my role in that was to,
Right.
the criminal investigation fell under my command.
Right.
It was to ensure that investigation proceeded. All the evidence was obtained, necessary evidence was obtained.
And would that have included the crash report and everything on it?
You know, I was not concerned about a crash report, to tell you the
Okay.
truth. Mine was focused around the actions of the troopers subsequent to the accident.
Okay. Did you
there
make any recommendations?
Not at that time, no.
Okay.
Because we have a standard protocol, as
Okay.
the chairman mentioned. We have a standard protocol. All the witnesses interviewed, evidence obtained.
So y'all have a standard protocol on some things of the way you do it. Some things.
As best we can, yes, ma'am.
I got it. Go ahead.
After interviews are obtained, reports are written. Usually the final step before presenting to the DA or consulting with the DA on the case is to obtain the autopsy report. That's usually the thing we're waiting on to finish before we present a case to the DA.
Okay.
That can take 60 to 90 days sometimes.
Okay. And when did y'all receive it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I can tell you, typically in an officer-involved case, officer-involved shooting, in custody death case, we're pressing to get everything done.
Get it expedited.
Get everything
I
done
was
as
just gonna
quickly as we
ask you that.
can on our part.
Okay.
The things we can't control, like autopsy report, things like that, toxicology report, we can't control. So a lot of times we're waiting on that before it's submitted to the district attorney.
Okay. So, what did you see on DeMoss's body camera that was so shocking?
I saw, instead of de-escalation, I saw what I considered an excessive use of force on the part of, I can't even call the officers' names now. I know DeMoss, but not DeMoss. The primary officer I felt was at fault in that, or in violation on that, was the one that's deceased now.
Hollingsworth?
Hollingsworth, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I saw he immediately went to his taser, rushed the driver's side of the vehicle, immediately went to his taser and deployed his taser, and I thought that was excessive. In my opinion, the driver wasn't going anywhere. The vehicle was up against a tree and a unit in front of it. I thought there was opportunity to de-escalate or wait for the driver to come out of the vehicle.
Okay.
That didn't happen. But ma'am, I got to qualify, I wasn't on the scene and my adrenaline wasn't pumping through my veins like it was theirs. Some of these things are dealt with instantaneously. We have the benefit of looking at replay in slow-mo and freeze frame.
Right.
That's not always the case. And I understand how some things happen and some mistakes are made. That was definitely a mistake that I identified in that video.
A mistake.
Yes.
You characterize it as a mistake. Who did you see in DeMoss's video? Who could you see? What other officers was in that video?
Just Hollingsworth.
Just Hollingsworth. You couldn't see anybody else but Hollingsworth and the driver. That's all that shows on that video. Doesn't show any other officers. Any other office from, was the Union Parish? None of them. You couldn't see any of them.
They were not on the scene.
They
the
weren't
only
there
two
yet.
officers on the scene were Hollingsworth and DeMoss at the time.
At the time?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the only one you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see DeMoss try to stop him from doing what he was doing?
Try to stop Hollingsworth?
Yes.
No, they were both hollering commands for the driver to get out of the vehicle, and they were using colorful terms.
Colorful terms.
Yes. Something that would shock the public senses. That's what I said before. It was shocking to all of us. It's something that...
Were there racial slurs?
No, I don't think so at all.
You said colorful, so I didn't know if you meant...
No, ma'am.
Just explicit.
Using, derogatory, vulgar language, that kind of stuff. And that's not uncommon in police work. To gain control of a suspect is to do what it takes to gain control of a suspect. That use vulgar language sometimes, but it's not pleasing to hear, for sure.
I don't think it's pleasing either. I'm not sure if that helps people to comply or not, or whether, like you say, it escalates that situation. So I don't know. I guess I would disagree with you on just because an individual is stopped in a bad situation in a high-speed chase, does that give officers the right to talk to them demeaningly?
No, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't, but you said sometimes the adrenaline is running.
That's
but
right,
I think
yes.
that would probably go back to training.
That's
right?
true. Our training,
Right,
is to
because there are
maintain
some
this.
officers who've been in some similar situations that you would never hear them say those things. Correct?
I agree.
So it's about the character of the individual a lot of times. Correct?
It can be, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll let someone else have another bite at the apple.
Just learning how to do this. Thank you, Rep Marcel. Rep Bacala for a question.
Thank you. So you saw the initial video, and that caused you, I guess, as a commander there, to initiate the internal or the criminal investigation, or it was already initiated.
Yes, sir. It was already initiated.
Okay, how often were you briefed as from early? You saw the video. Obviously, somebody called it to your attention, I'm assuming, and said you need to watch this. This is a case that we need to pursue. who would have been the person that alerted you to take a look at this case that we're currently working?
I'm not sure. I think Bob Brown is probably the one that provided information relative to the case. He was my criminal major at the time.
Okay, so Bob Brown would have said, "We got something I got to show you."
I'm not sure who said that,
Okay.
but I believe I was requested by the colonel to meet in the conference room
Okay.
to view the video.
Okay, so Colonel Reeves would have said, "We need to meet in the conference room, look at some video," and y'all looked at the video. It was obviously shocking and to synopsize. And at that point, there is a criminal investigation going on.
Yes.
How often were you guys updated on the criminal investigation? I guess the first question would be, since we're a group of lawyers except for me, were you updated?
Yes, I was
Okay.
updated periodically.
Updated.
Yes,
Okay.
as far as a schedule, I can't say for sure. Standard practice is that at least weekly.
So at least weekly you were updated about what's going on with the investigation.
Maybe not necessarily what's going on, but where are we now and what's left to do on a case.
Okay, well that's refreshing. It sounds like you're the first guy that apparently information was being shared with higher than the lieutenants and sergeants. So on a regular basis, perhaps as much often as weekly, you were giving some briefing about this. Who would typically be in the briefings when you were briefed? Is it just you in your office? Was it back in the who would have been privy to the briefings?
I would get a written weekly update on significant cases. I don't know that the Ronald Greene case was in that written report. It would have been a verbal presentation by Bob Brown typically. In many cases, I would think, and believe me, I'm basing my statements on my recollection because I don't have
Understand.
notes to refer to.
Yes, sir.
I would think almost certainly Colonel Reeves and Mike Noel would be apprised of the updates as well on
And
the
you're-
same schedule.
Well, they would have been apprised, and you said they were verbal updates by Mr.
Bob Brown.
Bob Brown. So Bob Brown gave verbal updates. They weren't necessarily written updates.
That's correct.
And he gave it to you verbally. And were the verbal updates given when y'all are all, when you said you thought it would be Colonel Reeves and who else would have gotten probably?
Mike Noel, Chief of Staff.
All right. So, what you're making the assumption that were y'all all in the same? Did Brown update you guys simultaneously or individually or sometimes one way and sometimes another way?
It was a combination, depending on where we were, our activities of the day, appointments, what have you, but oftentimes together.
And how many times do you think? And I know I'm not asking for an exact number, but how many times would you estimate that you were briefed verbally by Bob Brown?
On this particular case, probably 4 to 5 times.
All right, and time frame, and I think it's kind of important that we know because this case kind of stretched out over many years. And you said you retired when did you retire?
December 2020.
Okay, so between the date of the incident, in 2019, you had 4 or 5 briefings over a 1.5-year period.
Right. The investigations are at a high speed for the first, month, 60 days, 90 days until they're submitted to the DA, and then they drop off the radar for
Right.
forever, as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
okay, let's differentiate then. In the first, let's just call it the first 3 months after the death of Ronald Greene, how many briefings do you think you would have gotten in that time period?
That's what I reference to 4 to 5 times.
Okay, so you think 4 to 5 times in the first, let's just be generous and say 6 months. All right. And thereafter, how many times were you have been briefed?
Then there was no activity on that case until.
Let me back up. You feel like once at that point in time, at the 3-month, 6-month point, we may want to try to pinpoint that a little better. The criminal investigation is complete, and it is now in the hands of the district attorney, and you guys are awaiting his decision. Is that what you're inferring?
That's exactly correct. Yes.
All right. So there was nothing to investigate. You had made your case, whatever it was what it was, and it was in the hands of the district attorney.
Yes, sir.
So there was no further briefing because there was no further activity. You guys were just waiting for a decision there.
That's correct, with the exception that at some point became aware that the U.S. Attorney was aware, or FBI was interested in the case.
Well, okay, got it. And at some point in time, your investigators also received additional evidence in the form of the Clary video, which is sometime later.
As best I can determine, this after I retired. I was never aware of the Clary video.
All right, so you don't have, all you know is they presented to the DA the entirety of their investigative findings. Sometimes, and I guess we could figure out that date within our testimony, but and after that there was nothing more to discuss. It's with the DA.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we heard earlier testimony. I'm sure you were here about the interaction with IAA and criminal investigations. Did you have any conversations with the internal investigation side about holding off, not holding off, or procedurally, or whatever?
There was no discussion with internal affairs people. The discussion amongst the senior staff was, and I don't even know if it was the entire senior staff, but certainly those of us aware of the criminal investigation, that what can we do, right? And as Colonel Barnum testified, the protocol then was to carry out a criminal investigation. Once that was adjudicated, it was actually went to adjudication of the criminal case before administrative cases were kicked off. I can tell you we got tired of waiting, and at some point before I left, it was probably maybe fall of 2020, a decision was made, we really can't wait anymore. We need to kick off an administrative case.
All right, so the policy would be we're gonna hold off on the IA until the criminal investigation is complete. The criminal investigation dragged on. There was no investigation really going on. It was just in the hands of the prosecutor or maybe the U.S. attorney. And at some point, you guys kind of said, "That's it. We need to pursue the IA at this point in time because we're not hearing anything back."
That's true, and that decision only came after consultation with the DA and the U.S. Attorney, not U.S. Attorney, the FBI. Would it be a problem for us to commence an administrative case at this point?
And what did they say?
Best I can determine, the answer was no, go ahead. We were ready to do that, and we requested permission to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. So just a few questions. So you said, sorry, I had to step out for a second, so if any of it's duplicate, I apologize. So you were in charge of the criminal investigations, correct?
Yes.
And so were Albert Paxson and Scott Brown, were they part of your command under you?
That's correct, out of the Monroe Field office.
Okay. So are you probably familiar with Scott Brown's testimony from a few months ago?
Yes, sir.
And so he said that he was instructed not to turn over evidence. Video evidence to the DA. Do you have any comment on that?
I was shocked to hear it. It's the first time I had heard it when he testified. And so extremely concerned over that statement or that allegation.
And so he also said that this is quoting him, nobody in my chain of command wanted anything done. And so obviously that would include...
I heard him testify, but I think maybe that was speculation on his part. All I can tell you is that I never heard that statement. Never heard that allegation made, that he was requested not to submit evidence. That would have been against any protocol that state police has ever had. We submit all evidence. So I was shocked to hear that conversation.
And so you weren't aware of that at all?
That's
in
correct.
That time? He also said that he brought that the fact that he was asked this directly to Colonel Reeves? And so was that ever mentioned to you in any other context of concerns of it at all?
I never knew of any concerns relative to the case, and I only learned about conversations between he and Colonel Reeves through the media or his testimony.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. And I ask a quick question. You said it's the protocols of state police to turn over all evidence, correct?
That's correct.
But you were aware there was a discussion within state police itself about not providing the Clary video to the prosecutor.
No, I was not aware of any conversation relative to that. I read that in the media reports or testimony from this committee's, but never knew any of that.
And that would be against protocol to even have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. There are no more questions. Lieutenant Colonel White, we appreciate your being here today.
Thank you.
Members, what we're going to do is we're going to stand at ease for a few minutes. We're shuffling members in and out because we have other hearings going on that the members are needed for. So criminal justice needs to get started. So I'm going to let the criminal justice members go over there, get started, and then we're going to come back and finish off our last two witnesses once the committee gets started. All right, members, let's get back going. Waiting for our quorum, but I want to get everybody back. Where did? All right. Finally got everybody coordinated back again. Next to the table is Major J. Oliphant. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it Major or is it Lieutenant Colonel?
I retired as a major.
Okay.
Was transferred.
Gotcha. Now, you were Lieutenant Colonel of a patrol at the time of the Greene in custody death. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were informed of his death by Major Wayne Vadreen?
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay. And he would have received his information from Troop F Captain John Peters. Is that correct?
Yes, I would expect that, yes.
So let me ask you, why did no one question the death of Greene being classified as fatal?
I'm not sure to answer that question. I guess it was just never done at the time, for sure.
So, as I understand, it was being classified as a traffic fatality. And the Bureau of Investigation was initiated an in-custody death investigation. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, between you and, was it Lieutenant Colonel White? Was that White's title? What was White's title?
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel White.
Whose responsibility was it to ensure that the proper investigation was conducted?
Are you speaking of the traffic crash investigation or the criminal investigation?
Well, I'm talking about, obviously, it was purported to be a traffic crash investigation. A traffic crash fatality.
Okay.
So who was supposed to be investigating that?
That would have been at the troop level.
Okay. And who was investigating it, to your
I'm not
knowledge?
sure.
Okay. Has there ever been another time where you can remember where an alleged fatal crash was investigated as an in-custody death investigation?
I don't recall that.
And in any of your Monday morning briefings to Colonel Reeves, did it occur to you that there was a conflict of information being provided through the chain of command?
I'm not aware of a conflict of information, ma'am. Can you clarify that, please?
Well, and I'm sure you listened to some of the testimony. Supposedly Greene died in custody, but supposedly it was being classified or purported to be that he died from the crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's no scene diagram, there's no photos, there's no request for a vehicle CDR, there's nothing consistent, there's no reconstruction of the accident. All of the things I think you would agree are done in a fatal crash, but none of that was done. Did that ever strike you as inconsistent?
I was unaware that wasn't done.
Now, you sat in staff meetings, right?
Yes.
Was any of that ever discussed?
No, it was not.
Was it discussed in other cases? Or things like that normally discussed?
No, ma'am. Not fatal crashes or crashes, so to speak, no.
So who would have been responsible? Tell me, in the state police at the time Ronald Greene died, who would have been responsible to ensure that, hey, he died in a fatal crash, who would have been responsible to say, where's the photos? Where's the scene diagram? Where's the reconstruction? Where's the CDR from the vehicle?
That should happen at the sergeant and the lieutenant's level, and it shouldn't make it past the captain's level if it's a fatal crash.
And if it doesn't happen, then who looks at it at that point? If none of that has been done, does no one over them say this is a problem?
I would recognize that as a problem for sure. And there is protocol regarding fatal crashes. There's actually a checklist that should have been followed regarding a fatality crash. You're correct.
Were you made aware that Captain Peters was alleged to have told patrol personnel and Bureau personnel investigating the death of Ronald Greene that they were to hide the videos and not mention them in the report?
No, it was not.
Now, you were part of the disciplinary review committee for the Greene death investigation. Is that correct?
I'm pretty sure I was. I normally am.
You're pretty sure you were. I mean, this wasn't an everyday event, was it?
No, it wasn't. The only thing I'm
think
telling
you
you
would
is that
remember?
well, maybe not, because I sat in on many disciplinary review committees. So if I had to guess, yes, I was, but I don't specifically remember that particular DRC, as we call them.
So here's my trouble. On May 10, 2019, Colonel Reeves sends a text to the governor advising him of an in-custody death of an individual after a violent struggle. Because, as we understand it, that was protocol. So is it protocol just to send a text and nobody question anything past that? Nobody in senior command question anything about what occurred in a violent struggle where a man dies? Where the autopsy report from that night says that he has head injuries that are inconsistent with a crash and were from a blunt object. Does no one in senior command question anything?
I would imagine so, yes.
But you don't recall?
No, I didn't specifically, no.
And why not?
Because it was my understanding that it was in investigations. It had been transferred to criminal investigations.
And so when it's transferred to criminal investigations, the people involved, the officers involved, just stay working in state police and nobody worries about that?
Not in every case. Not in every case. It may have happened in the Ronald Greene case. I don't specifically remember what the status of their assignments were.
No, I believe there was no change in their assignments. And therein lies the reason for my questioning. Mm-hmm. So as we look forward and as we now know what the videos showed, but everyone wants to testify that, oh, well, we don't do disciplinary reviews until after the criminal investigation is complete. Was that your understanding?
That's correct.
So you have an officer, let's just say hypothetically, that uses excessive force on an individual and it's being reviewed for criminal charges. That officer just gets to stay working in state police and interact with the public until that criminal investigation is complete?
Not in every case. There are times when we have our Monday morning meeting that there are recommendations made to the chief and or the colonel, which was Colonel Reeves at the time. Colonel Reeves makes the final decision on whether someone is placed on administrative leave, they're given administrative duties, or they're allowed to go back to work. And I do not specifically remember what my recommendation was.
Have you seen the videos from this incident?
I'm sure I have, yes, yes, yes.
Can you think of a worse case than this? Do you know of a worse case than this?
I can't think of a worse case than this. It's a very, very bad case.
Right. Yet there was no disciplinary action taken from the start.
In terms of administrative leave, I guess not, no.
Give me 1 second, Mr. Chair. Now, at what point did you see, tell me which videos you reviewed.
If I recall correctly, I saw just about all of them.
Lieutenant Clary's video?
I don't recall seeing Clary's video. I think I recall seeing Clary in a video, but I don't know if I saw Clary's video specifically.
Okay, well, I've asked everyone this, and it strikes me odd.
Mm-hmm.
The governor did a press conference long before this incident, very proud of the fact that all officers were equipped with body cameras. There was full deployment. And I just question, and I wonder if you agree with me, if an incident like this occurs, there's a violent struggle, a man is dead, why no one would say who was at the scene and where's the video from every officer at the scene? Did you do that?
No, I didn't.
Why?
Because actually that's not specifically my responsibility. That responsibility, once it goes to investigations, is an investigative function. Troop commanders, troop personnel, they are compelled to, I guess, cooperate with any investigation in terms of evidence needed. Whatever is needed, investigative officers should have that information. But as far as following up to determine who was on the scene and who was involved, no, that didn't fall within my purview.
So we notify, I say we, the colonel notifies the governor. I mean, is it just considered a matter of protocol? Oh, somebody died in custody after a violent struggle. Let's notify the governor, but let's not ask any questions. Let's not do any investigation from the senior command. Let's not worry about it. I don't understand why there's a protocol to notify the governor of an in-custody death after a violent struggle, but everyone in senior command is not asking any questions and not talking in Monday morning meetings about this one incident. Can you help me understand that?
Well, it's not that we didn't talk about the incident. Initially, there were some conversations about the Ronald Greene matter. At some point, we watched videos and we did have discussions. However, when it went to investigations, that's pretty much when the discussions kind of ceased.
When did it go to investigations?
It was pretty quick, within about a week or so, if I recall correctly.
A week of the incident?
Mm-hmm.
So y'all just stopped talking about it after it went to investigations?
Well, we weren't getting any real-time briefings. I think we sat and watched the videos. And then after a period of time, which I don't specifically remember, there was no activity regarding the Ronald Greene matter. No discussion, no briefings. And normally we would get briefings in our meetings when there's new activity, when there's something new that has occurred since our last meeting. That's when they would kind of give us an update.
Well, let's talk about that. August 2019, as I understand, state police met with D.A. Belton, and as I understand, D.A. Belton was going to is that not a new development that warrants discussion by senior command?
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
Never has been. In any case.
I can't tell you that. I mean, specific to that incident, when I found out that it was going to, from what I understand, it was Department of Justice. That's what I was told. And I think Bob Brown mentioned that to me. After a period of time, John Peters and or Wayne Vadrine contacted me. Amongst all of the things that was happening throughout the country, unrest, there were protests and that kind of thing. John Peters contacted me, or Wayne, one of them, and said, Colonel, there is no movement on the Ronald Greene matter. And it actually shocked me. It actually surprised me that there was no movement.
What do you mean was no movement? What does that mean?
It was at the DA's office. I'm sorry. It was at the DA's office, but there was nothing being done about it. They hadn't heard anything. So he asked if I would check with the senior command and see if he could contact the DA. Apparently he knew him. Contact the DA and see where we stood with that case.
When did you see Lieutenant Clary's video?
I don't know if I ever saw Lieutenant Clary's video. I'm sorry.
Come on. I mean, Lieutenant Clary's video is the video that has opened this case wide open. It is the video that was essentially buried.
I'm not sure even when that video was out. I left January of 2021. And at some point, I think there was an investigation by the new command staff regarding Clary's video.
And why did you leave state police?
Well, when Colonel Reeves announced his retirement, I contacted retirement, and I got 2 dates, January of 2021 and June the 18th of 2021. And I had a meeting with Colonel Davis, and I urged him to determine who his senior command staff was going to be. And during that meeting, he indicated that he had some concerns about August McKay. He indicated he had some concerns about Ronald Greene and also Keisha Domingue. Well, I reminded him that August McKay did not occur under my command. That happened when I was at Region 3. I was a major at Region 3. He also made mention that someone at this level indicated that there was a disconnect between the patrol supervisors and the troops, I guess at this level, which I certainly disagree. He indicated that he had some concerns and he was considering making some changes. And at that point, I asked him, please make me one of the changes, because I'm not from Baton Rouge. Frankly, I don't like Baton Rouge. I'm from Natchitoches, Louisiana. That's where I live, and that's where I want to go. I want to go home. At that point, he advised me that, okay, he agreed he would be making the change. And I think he said it may be effective around the 1st of the year. After January the 4th, I think, is when it took place, I was transferred to the major's position, which is Doug Kane's old position, executive officer to the colonel, which I was allowed to work from home. I did an assessment on SWAT and mobile field force for the 6 months leading up to my retirement, and from there I retired.
Let me ask you this. If you retired in January 2021, were you aware of the Lieutenant Clary video at the time of your retirement, or did you not learn of the Lieutenant Clary video until after your retirement?
Ma'am, I don't recall that. I'm sorry.
At what point, sir, was it your understanding that Ronald Greene died from a violent struggle and not from a car crash?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's my opinion that he died from injuries sustained from the incident, whether it was the fatal crash and the ruptured aorta. I'm not sure if that's what the autopsy report indicates, but I do believe that that's what caused his death.
The crash?
In connection with the injuries sustained from the incident.
When you say incident, do you mean crash or do you mean beating?
Well, we can go with beating. I mean, that's what Hollingsworth said. He basically said that in a video. He beat him. So I don't have any issue with that. I mean, he's speaking from the grave, pretty much.
So when did you learn of the beatings? At what point?
Well, I learned of the incident in its entirety when I watched the videos, and if I recall correctly, was within the week or so after the incident occurred.
Perfect. So let me ask you this. Were you present for the press conference or briefings to the governor in 2019 and in 2020 relative to the death of Ronald Greene?
I don't recall being at a press conference with the governor regarding this matter.
Okay. Do you remember hearing of anything where the governor reported that he died from the traffic crash?
I don't recall that, ma'am.
Seems to be the theme of the day. People don't recall.
Well, I'll tell you what I know.
Because my question would be, at any point, did you hear anybody talking about publicly that Ronald Greene died from the car crash? Did you hear anybody?
Absolutely, there were people talking about that.
Did you ever think, and what about senior command? Were they talking about that?
I'm not sure.
Did you ever
Not
think
sure.
that you should correct anyone or warn anyone or suggest to anyone that that was blatantly misleading?
No, let me mention something. You talk about the crash, and I think one of the things that we were missing is there have been times where a crash will occur and someone will die within, I guess, the 7 days or so after the crash occurred, and it's worked as a traffic fatality. I leave manner of death up to the coroner's office. John Peters actually contacted me, and he mentioned some information regarding ruptured aortas. He mentioned some information regarding side impacts and that kind of thing. If I'm not mistaken, he actually sent me an email, and I forwarded it to legal for their review. However, I told John, I said, John, look, let's make sure we don't do this. The one thing I don't want to do is get into determining manner of death. That's for the coroner to determine. So that was pretty much a dead issue after that.
Put aside manner of death, sir.
Mm-hmm.
The autopsy report indicates the man suffered blunt head trauma inconsistent with the traffic crash. In any world that I live in terms of law enforcement, that's related to use of force. So then the question becomes, was it excessive? How do we ignore that finding in the pathologist report? You were over patrol. This man allegedly is being purportedly having died from a car crash, yet there is nothing done consistent with a car crash. Quite to the contrary, nothing done consistent with a car crash. And that pathologist report has that finding. And everybody wants to turn their head, a blind eye, not ask any questions. Oh, let's not get into the legal semantics of manner of death. Was that not your job?
No, it was not.
What was your job?
My understanding, well, I had a lot of things that I had to do. Manage 10 troops and deal with personnel matters.
One of these troops was involved in
yeah,
this
Troop
incident.
F. I'm specific. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that.
You were managing that troop?
Yes.
Okay. And then that troop was involved in the investigation?
Yes.
And you were managing that troop?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So in management of that troop, you asked no questions?
Once it had been given to investigations, that's their responsibility.
Yeah, it's the same answer. You're right. Right. I yield.
Thank you, Representative. So when did John Peters email you this email you referenced?
If I had to give you a range, of course, it was prior to the transfer, so it had to be 2020, maybe early 2020. I'm not sure.
Because we've asked for a lot of emails and we've not received that email.
Okay.
And I'd like for state police to produce that email. Representative Marcel.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Major Oliphant. You said your duties, one of your duties were to manage the troops, the different areas, right?
Yes.
And
resources, yes.
And that included Troop F,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And so when this happened with Ronald Greene, you were the person over that troop. That's right, correct?
Yes, Troop F fell under.
Okay. And
Yes,
once
for
they gave the crash report that they did where someone died in custody, you had an opportunity to review that.
I've never seen the crash report.
That's not something that you do?
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
So explain to me, if someone dies in the custody of state police and you're over that troop, what do you look at?
That's usually a captain and major.
No.
function.
I don't want to know what their functions is. I want to know when somebody dies in your custody, right?
Okay.
Of the troop that you're over, as a person in the position that you are in, what do you normally do? What's the normal function? Because one of the things that we found in these hearings is that I've asked before, some of the things that happens in a fatality, like the tire tread tracks and all of that was all that was missing. That didn't happen, right? So what do you do? What is your function?
I'm sorry, what did you mean it didn't happen?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You just said you didn't have the crash report. In a fatality, that you're supposed to get the tire tread, whatever y'all call that, right?
Yes.
In a fatality, right? Am I accurate?
Yes, you are.
Okay. In these hearings, they have said that did not happen. But you're telling me that you don't even look at the crash report. If somebody dies in the custody of the troopers that you oversee, that's not a function that you do.
No, it's not.
You're not. Okay, so I'm asking you, what is your function? This happens, say it happens today. What would you do if you were still the major?
In a major's position, I would probably contact that captain. But from a lieutenant colonel's position, all of that information, if it's an in-custody death with a fatality crash, that information goes to criminal investigations, and we get briefed on it. But that's about the
So it goes to
sum
criminal.
of it.
So it goes to criminal investigations, regardless of whether or not, just because it was in the custody of the police. So it automatically goes there. All fatalities.
That's been my experience. And if it's an in-custody death, that's been my experience.
That's been your experience. And you mentioned earlier, because I was a little confused about when you said you don't do you don't want to weigh in on the coroner's report, right? And you want to make sure the coroner does the coroner report and y'all do y'all's job, right?
That's the conversation I had with John Peters, yes.
That's the conversation. Okay, so would it be accurate to say if the coroner does not get the right information from your offices that you are over, then that's a problem? Because I think many times that we've heard that in this committee, that the coroner did not get all of the information. So who does that fall back on? The person over the troop, or do they discuss that with you? Or, it's just...
That should have been at the troop commander's level. I would hope that the coroner would make an independent assessment of the manner of death,
okay,
regardless of what came from the troop.
But correct me if I'm wrong. The only way for him to make an accurate decision is to get all of the information. I mean, if I provide you only with certain information, that you can only come up with certain things, right?
I can agree with that.
Okay. And so at some point, the coroner said that this was inconsistent of a crash. But I just heard you say you think it was the crash and the beating. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, you did.
I thought
did.
that's what I heard. So you still think that the absent Hollingsworth beating him and dragging him and all that, you think that he still would have died anyway? That's pretty much what you're saying.
That's my understanding, but I don't know that. That's my opinion. I don't know that.
No,
I have not read it.
Based upon what? Your understanding, but you got to base it upon something. You didn't read the coroner's report. You don't have the crash report. What you basing your opinion on?
Well, I mean, I've heard conversations about how many reports were there? I think were there 2 coroner's reports?
Yeah, the one that had to be corrected.
Yeah, well, I think I was actually privy to the first one. I don't recall reading the second one.
But we've been doing this for quite some time now, so I'm sure it's been in the news, it's been in the paper, all of these hearings. I'm sure have you watched any of the hearings or heard anything about the hearings?
Very few.
Or you've
Very
been in a
few.
vacuum? Because
I haven't been in a vacuum, but
Okay,
I've watched
good.
very few of these proceedings.
Okay, so then you would know that the coroner had to change the cause of death, right?
No, I wouldn't know that.
You wouldn't know that.
No,
Okay, well, where did you say you live in Natchitoches?
I live in Natchitoches.
Y'all have newspapers up
We
there?
do.
Okay, I'm
Computers
just
and
checking.
all of that, but I hunt and fish.
Okay. I
That's what I like doing.
I get it. I'm just trying to figure out how everybody in the nation on CNN and everywhere else knows about this case, but you don't know what I'm talking about. That strikes me as a little odd. But anyway, let's go back to what your duties were. Once you said you viewed the video, when did you view the video?
Which video are you talking about, man?
Which one did you view?
If I recall correctly, I viewed all of them except Clary's, I think. I'm
So
not sure.
DeMoss's video. You saw that one, right?
Yeah, but I to be honest with you, I can't sit and differentiate. But if DeMoss was to walk in here right now, I wouldn't know who he was. So I can't differentiate between what videos. I do recall seeing a video where Hollingsworth was on top of Mr. Greene and he was punching him.
Okay. And I think we heard testimony earlier that, no, let me ask you a different way. If you saw that, what did you think of that video?
Oh, it was terrible.
It was terrible, huh?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what the lieutenant, the retired lieutenant colonel said earlier. So it was terrible. Well, he said it was, let me go back to his testimony. Shocking.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So was it shocking to you?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
That was the consensus in the room.
That was the consensus in the room. So that being the consensus in the room, nothing else happened, because I keep hearing the same thing that Villio was talking about, that you all didn't act because there was this criminal investigation going on. So when did the criminal investigation, you said it started on the onset, right?
It started not long after the incident occurred, yes, as I recall.
Is it the protocol of state police that when there's a criminal investigation and y'all viewing these videos, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's looking at least a few of them. Y'all saw a few of them, right?
Yes, the senior staff, yes.
Right, the senior staff. That nothing else should be done to those officers while that investigation is going on. Is that what we're hearing?
As I stated earlier, oftentimes there are recommendations made to the colonel in terms of administrative.
And what was your recommendation?
I said earlier, I don't recall that. I don't recall making or what the specific recommendation was. I've made a bunch of recommendations to Colonel Reeves over the
but this is a pretty high profile case, and I would think that you would either know what your recommendation was or that you would go back and look at it. You didn't keep notes of anything?
No.
You didn't keep any notes?
No. Not specific to making a recommendation regarding that, no.
Well, what notes do you have regarding Ronald Greene?
I'm not sure if I have any notes regarding Ronald Greene, but I do have a diary.
You have
or
a diary.
Journal.
You have a journal.
Yes.
And so you don't think that, even though you thought it was shocking and terrible that you saw this, you don't think you would have documented anything, any recommendations, or who you would have been speaking to regarding the death of Ronald Greene?
No.
Which I call a murder, and you call I guess a bad accident.
Well, I think I agreed that it was a beating earlier.
Both, but you said you thought both had something to do with it.
Yes, if that's
right.
According to the coroner's report. The initial one that I did.
The initial one had to be changed because information wasn't given to them, and once they looked at it, they said this is not consistent, is what the coroner said.
And I'm good with that. I have no issue with that.
So then we need to let that go out of the window and stick with the one that, if you're going to stick with the coroner, let's stick with the last one that he had.
Okay.
And what did the last one say?
I did not, I don't recall reading that particular report.
And nobody told you anything about it, right?
No.
Wow. Let me ask you something else. Are there published reports on officer-involved incidents?
Published reports? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Among the senior staff, do y'all publish any officer-involved or verbal or written about any officer-involved incidents? Is that anything y'all do?
Are you talking about shooting specifically, or?
No, not shootings. We didn't have a shooting. We had a beating, but not a shooting.
Okay. I would imagine.
Any reports on officer-involved incidents? Do y'all keep a record of those?
I would think so, yes, but that's not something I'm involved in. I don't.
You're
keep
not
a record
involved in
of
that.
them, yeah.
So you weren't involved in any of the meetings that we heard about earlier where they had the upper staff in the meetings, Reeves and all of those people. Were you involved in those meetings?
Yes,
You
most
were.
if not all of them. I was
Most,
there.
if not all of them. And what were the conversations in those rooms about, it specifically to Ronald Greene?
As I stated earlier, when or upon watching the videos, the consensus was absolute disgust, embarrassment that officers spoke the way they did, the excessive force used. It was just an uneasy feeling in the room.
An uneasy feeling. And
yes.
so when y'all got through with the uneasy feeling, was there any other recommendations that came out of the uneasy feelings? 'Cause
Other than it going to criminal investigations. And if I recall correctly, Hollingsworth, I think he lawyered up, so to speak, and criminal investigations were not able to get the information from him.
So I'm sure you're familiar with Scott Davis.
I'm aware of Scott, yes.
You're aware of him? He was a use of force guy, right?
Yes.
And so if he gave information to whoever his superior was and gave y'all that information of what he felt, would you all have considered what he said or not? I just dismissed it because the way he presented here is that he gave you all the information and y'all kind of just didn't want to hear it.
Well, I never portrayed anything about not wanting to hear it. I mean, I think it's important to get all of the perspectives.
That's why I'm asking you. I want your perspective.
Yes, I think his information is real important. If he, as a training officer, indicates that it was excessive force, then yeah, something needs to be done about that. It's a training issue.
Was anything done about it?
I'm not sure. It's a training issue. I'm not sure.
It's a training issue. So I'm saying that the persons that were using the use of force, that he identified, that he felt something else should have happened, that officers should have been fired. Was anything done about it? And did you weigh in on those recommendations, sir?
I'm sure I did. I mean, they gave everybody an opportunity to speak. However, I don't recall specifically what I said or what I recommended.
And
if I did, I mean, I would certainly tell you that.
You don't recall?
Right.
Okay. Were you involved in the meeting with D.A. Belton?
No, it was not.
You were not. You were not asked to attend that meeting?
No, it was not.
And so, knowing what other videos have you seen?
I don't recall seeing any other videos.
You said earlier you thought you saw all of them except one. Now, I thought that's what you said.
Other than Clary's?
Right. I thought you said I saw a lot of videos.
I said I recall seeing Hollingsworth on a video on top of Greene beating him. I'm not sure how many videos there were.
You're not sure?
No, I'm not.
And would any of that be in your journal?
I doubt it. You're more than welcome to look at my journal. You and anybody else.
I'm just wondering where you would keep your records of such important issues. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Since your memory is a little lapsed. You know, I got bad memory myself. But
it's not necessarily lapsed, but it's been a while since I've been there and in that position and with the agency, so I don't retain those types of things.
Were you scheduled to retire, or you just decided to retire? It's just, you know, it's just kind of amazing to us that almost everybody who was surrounded in the top of the Ronald Greene's death has either just abruptly retired or been promoted. Mm-hmm. One of them.
Right.
You know?
Well, actually, I had contacted retirement upon learning that Colonel Reeves was going to retire.
And that was after Ronald Greene's death, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I had 27 years, and then I had 3 years of second annual that gave me as close to 30 years as I needed. So.
Okay. So what are you doing now, sir? Just hunting and fishing?
A little bit of that.
Are you working?
I haven't started working yet, no.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because you said you just hunt and fish, and I know you don't read the paper much and you don't watch us, so I was wondering what you was doing in your spare time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Marzell. I do have a question for you. When you said you were in the room and y'all saw videos, do you know what date that was when you first saw the video?
No, I don't. I would think it was within the first week or so of the incident.
And who was in the room?
It's usually Colonel Reeves, Colonel Noel, Colonel White, Colonel Barnum. I think maybe legal, Miss Faye Morrison.
Okay.
I'm not sure who else was in there.
Okay. And who actually played the video? Like, give me. I'm because I got the logs and I'm trying to reconcile what's being said by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the room. What's the room look like? I know this is kind of silly, but give me a description of the scene is what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I guess you can say it's if I had to break it down to measurements, maybe 15 by 20 room, rectangular shaped, long table. Colonel Reeves sits at the head of the table, and everybody else kind of sits around the table or at the wall. There's a television that's in the corner, and if I'm not mistaken, Internal Affairs came through and actually showed the video. Now, I don't recall whether they accessed evidence.com or they played it on a thumb drive. I do recall at one point watching it on a external memory device.
And you say at some point in that meeting or at some point under a later date?
I think it was that meeting, possibly.
And what do you mean by external device?
Well, a thumb drive, I
Okay.
guess.
So, I guess I'm looking at the access to evidence.com, and I'm trying to see when it was downloaded. It was downloaded, appears, if I'm looking at this right, on May 15th, right? By Scott Davis. Was Scott Davis one of the people who put it on a thumb drive and showed it to you?
I don't recall. I thought it was Internal Affairs, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to find where it was downloaded for you to watch. There's a stream on May 20th by Corey Borcherding. Are you familiar with Corey?
Yes, I'm not sure where he works or where he was working at the time. I'm not sure.
Did he stream it?
I can't tell you that.
I guess we have a fundamental issue is that we still have not figured out, after how many meetings this has been, how the records, I'm not accusing that they don't match up. What I'm saying is there seems to be a disconnect connecting what the evidence.com logs say and what the testimony has been. So in a light most common to everybody else, I'm trying to say is I'd like an explanation so that I can reconcile in my mind how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm reading the data wrong. That's a likely scenario as well. I'm not excluding anything. I'm just trying to reconcile your logs and audits with what happened.
I'm sorry, I can't explain that. I can only tell you what I recall in terms of watching a video.
So I would assume if you're watching the video, you have a laptop, and if it's being streamed, you're going to see somebody go to a website and click a link, and it's going to open up. Is that right? Is that how it works?
I think so. I think there's actually a television in the room.
Right, but the television is just mimicking what's happening on the
Yes,
screen, right? So you should see like little mouse scroll up and then click. Did you see that, or did you see them go and just put a thumb drive in the back of the computer and then go through files like Microsoft files?
I think it may have been a thumb drive, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, how you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. Look, a couple of things. So let's start with one of the last things. You said you think IA was in the room. Who would it have been from IA?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Sorry, I can't tell you exactly who it would have been.
But if it would have been IA, it would have been somebody outside of command staff. correct?
Outside of the senior command staff?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right. But the people that you named in the room, as I recall, were all senior command staff members.
Not specifically when we watched that video.
Okay. So give me the list again. That who was in the room as you recall?
Colonel Reeves, Colonel Noel, Colonel White, Colonel Barnum, and I'm sorry I forgot. I think Starnes may have been there. Colonel Starnes.
20 seconds.
And legal. I think legal affairs.
You said Faye Morrison,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just trying to make sure because I'm not familiar with all your personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these folks, I guess the one you named it. I mean, any of these folks were part of IA at the time?
No. And that was kind of at the start of the meeting. I don't want to get you confused. I think we may have met prior to them actually coming in. That first list of names I gave you, but I'm not sure who from internal affairs could have came in and showed the videos.
Okay. Go back to something about this when you were talking to Representative, I don't know if it was Marcel or Vilio, but one of them, they asked you about the crash report, and I assume that would be the Hollingsworth crash report, right? I mean, did you have more than one crash report?
Are you talking about the Hollingsworth incident regarding Ronald Greene?
Right.
That's what I expect, yes.
All right. And you said you didn't sign off on that crash report?
No, I don't sign off on those reports.
Okay, so who signs off on
That should be at the captain's level.
who would have been the captain?
John
at that?
Peters.
That's what Peters would have signed off on that. All right. You said something interesting to me that caught my attention. You said you didn't want to determine the cause of death, but then you came back and you said the fatal crash. I think when you were talking to Representative Vilio. And then we've talked about in custody deaths. When you say fatal crash, it just seems like you've already made a determination. And I think that kind of follows up on Representative Marcel, that you think the crash, when somebody says fatal crash to me, it tells me that they died from the crash.
Okay.
Is that what you meant to say, or I just want to be clear?
When you say when I said fatal crash, that's kind of, when you have a crash and there's a fatality involved, notwithstanding whether it was from the actual crash or specific to this, the Ronald Greene matter where there was an incident or a beating. That's terminology that's used, a fatal crash. Now, whatever the coroner's report says, that's what I stand behind. So,
All right.
It is what it is.
Let me ask you this. Now, I just want to be clear. During the time of Ronald Greene's death, you were over road patrol?
Patrol, yes.
Patrol.
Mhm.
All right. Would you have been over? Well, let me ask you. And forgive me because I've been in and out. What does that actually encompass?
Being over patrol.
Yes.
Well, there's 10 troops, including Troop N, and you basically manage the resources. You manage, I guess, personnel and where they are throughout the state, and you do that through the majors, and they trickle that information down to the captains and so forth. So that's kind of how patrol resources are managed.
Right. When you say personnel, I would assume personnel also includes discipline.
Correct.
All right. So, and I know Representative Vilio asked you about the video, and you said, I think you said was this the worst video you've seen?
I can't say it's the worst one, but it's very bad.
All right,
There's no question about it.
Did you, I guess, subscribe to the theory of it being awful but lawful, like Colonel Reeves, or did you have a different opinion?
No, I didn't. I don't even recall him saying awful but lawful in a meeting. That may have not occurred in
I'm
that
not saying
setting.
I'm not saying it happened in a meeting.
Yeah, but no, it was. I don't think it was lawful. at all. It's certainly awful. No question about it. I think the officers need to be disciplined for sure.
All right. Did you push for, after reviewing the video, did you push for Hollingsworth to be disciplined or arrested or what have you?
I think when the matter occurred and the decision was made to send it to criminal investigations, and it just kind of seemed like it just ran stale.
Well, but I'm not asking about that, though.
Well, I'm just working my way up to that.
Okay, go ahead.
And then it went to the DA's office. John Peters contacted me and said there was nothing being done about it. It was at the Department of Justice, from what I understood. I think at some point the recommendation was made to terminate. And I think that was after we learned that he may have struck Ronald Greene in the head with a flashlight, because that was not known up front.
Well, let me ask this then. Who would have made, seems like the recommendation was made by someone other than you to terminate. So who made the recommendation to terminate Hollingsworth?
No, I think when we learned that he had struck him in the head with a flashlight, that's when we came back with the administrative investigation. That's kind of what initiated the administrative investigation.
And you wouldn't have seen that wasn't obvious to you from the, let's say it this way. I've seen the video.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed obvious to me from the first sighting of it that he struck him with something. Now you may not have seen what he was hitting him with, but you could it was obvious that you could see that he was hitting him with something.
It looked to me that he was hitting him with his fist.
Well, we have two different interpretations.
I guess we do, but initially, and I think everybody was under the impression that he had struck him with his fist. And when I learned that he had struck him with a flashlight, it was after a time where I saw pictures of Ronald Greene that surfaced on Facebook, and I think it was autopsy photos, where he had little indentations in the side of his head. He had C's, so to speak,
right.
the letter C's in the side of his head. And if I recall correctly, I contacted Doug Kane, because Doug Kane stayed on top of public affairs matters, social media and that kind of thing, and this was Facebook. So I brought it to his attention, and I said, that don't look like a fist. That we need to get Hollingsworth back in and determine what he struck Ronald Greene with. And from what I recall, we brought him back in under administrative investigation, and he admitted to striking him with a flashlight.
All right. So did Hollingsworth say initially that he struck him with the fist, or was the question ever asked, what did you strike him with?
I'm not sure what question was asked. That was, again, it was it was in investigations. It was my understanding that he wanted to speak to his lawyer. He did not want to talk to investigations.
All right, so I'm confused a little bit now.
Okay.
So I'm assuming somebody brought Hollingsworth in initially, questioned him about the incident.
I think they attempted to, and he wanted to talk to his lawyer instead. He didn't want to talk to investigators. Actually upset everybody in the room, but.
All right, so when did it go for him lawyering up to him admitting that he struck Ronald Greene with the flashlight?
This was after it had gone to the DA's office. After, from what I understand, it went to the Department of Justice. And I think the Department of Justice made their ruling, whatever ruling they made, and then they gave us authorization to move forward with the administrative investigation. The period of time, I'm not sure, but it was a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm shift gears slightly here with you. Were you over the patrol during the time of Aaron Bowman?
At the time it surfaced, yes. I don't remember the date of the Aaron Bowman
All right.
issue.
But when it surfaced.
Yes.
All right. And you saw that video as well, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. What was your take on that video?
I was concerned, and my recommendation was that it need to be submitted for criminal investigation.
All right. And just for clarity, Aaron Bowman, that was a Troop F case as well?
Yes.
All right.
If I'm not mistaken, is that the Brown?
Yes.
Is it the Brown case?
Yeah, Jacob Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was going. So you were over disciplined. So I guess the question, I mean, did you push for Jacob Brown to be arrested?
I don't know what I pushed for, to be honest with you. After it, I mean, that's another thing that was recommended to go to criminal investigations.
Yeah,
So-
but you over personnel, and you just told me you over discipline. So it's hard for me to reconcile that you would be over personnel, including discipline, and not recommend some type of discipline just because it's moved off to investigations. I mean, you have a say-so, and it's, I would assume next to Colonel Reeves or the Lieutenant Colonel, you have one of the final say-sos. I mean, you'd be like second or third in that pecking order, wouldn't you?
Well, we make recommendations. Colonel Reeves makes the final decision.
Right.
And
So-
you're asking me what specific recommendation I made for Brown?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't recall. That was another one of those incidents. If I knew, I would tell you.
Yeah, but look, and look, I'm not really trying to be difficult, but I just find that, frankly, I find that unbelievable.
Okay.
Because this is your job. If you told me, hey, look, discipline and personnel, that wasn't under my guise, that wasn't under the scope of my authority, maybe I would say, okay. But I think anybody who would see either one of these videos would just have an opinion, even though we might not have any authority to act on our opinions, but we all gonna have opinions about it. And I'm sure you had an opinion. You had more than an opinion. Your opinion had some weight of recommendation on discipline.
I agree.
And these aren't cases whereas an officer was speeding in his unit and somebody reported it. I mean, these cases ended up with, in one, what I consider, and I think some of your own troops consider, torture and murder. On another case, the man was severely beaten. And so I just look, I'm gonna just say this. I find it disturbing that I guess just the apathy shown, because that's what it shows to me. Like I don't even, it didn't even make a big enough difference for me to even remember what I did or what I said.
Yeah. Well, that's incorrect.
And I understand. And look, I'm just telling you, that's my opinion of it.
Correct.
Because I'm sure something of that severity, I would remember at least what my opinion was or what recommendation I made. It's not like this is something so trivial. But for you not to remember, in my opinion, shows that maybe you considered it trivial. And I know you're saying that's not necessarily the case, but
It's not.
that's the vibe I get from it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you get that, but no, it's not.
So I mean, if somebody had said something that was impactful or was a very important part of my employment, I'm not telling you I would remember everything automatically. But we do these things called refreshing our memory. So if somebody refreshed my memory and said, "Hey man, do you remember?" and I might say, "Oh no, I don't remember." And then they go a little further and say, "Oh," and I say, "Oh yeah, I do remember that."
Okay.
And then it refreshes my memory and say, but something so significant as to whether you made a recommendation and what that recommendation was, I just find it unbelievable that you wouldn't recall what it was. Now, if you don't want to share it with us, I get that, but I just don't. I'm not gonna sit here and kind of let you off the hook and saying that I don't recall, because I think most people, I think 99% of the people would recall if they were in your position what the recommendation was.
Well, I appreciate you not letting me off the hook. But I can tell you that I sat in on many DRCs. A lot of times troopers do things that they're not supposed to. And I understand you think that, this one is a standout specific to Bowman and specific to Ronald Greene. But without me sitting there documenting what my specific recommendation was, it could go from no action to termination to criminal investigation. So I can't sit here and put a specific number because I don't know. And if I did recall it or if I did document it, I would certainly tell you. I have no reservation about letting you know what I know. And if I don't remember it, I just don't remember that.
All right. And well, let me say this. I would hope that it would be something significant, and this is something that just doesn't happen all the time, because if it did, then I would find that even more disturbing.
I agree.
So that sort of is part of the reason why I just think, this is not an everyday occurrence. This is something that should be unusual, should be, and I did a public records request. The last 2 years that state police had records, I think, were 2019 and 2020, and I think they had one in custody death in one of those years and 2 in custody deaths the other year. And I know one of them I'm talking about is not a death, but these aren't normal occurrences. Mm-hmm. So if I'm asking you about 1 or 2 events, it seems to me that those should stand out to you, and that would be a better recollection of what those events of what happened.
Yeah, the incident will stand out. However, the recommendation for that specific discipline, it doesn't, because I've sat in on many DRCs, and I can't tell you what I recommended.
All right, let me ask it this way then. You remember watching the Bowman video?
Yes.
All right. Based on your memory today, what would you have recommended?
Some form of discipline, and possibly termination. Absolutely.
All right. And I'm assuming, so ultimately, as I understand it, Jacob Brown was arrested, right?
I think he was, yes.
Yeah, but
I did see that on the news, by the way.
Yeah, all right. Well, good. And I don't think that happened until Colonel Davis took over. Or was named as colonel.
Not sure of the date.
All right. It just disturbs me. I just think that as someone who was over all the troops, including Troop F, and I think at least from what I've heard, the reputation that Troop F had well before this, that this stands out. And I just got to tell you, I appreciate that we can have people, African American men, that rise to the level of Colonel Davis and rose to the level that you rose to. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to do the same things when we get in those positions, then it really isn't any good to have us there. And so I just think that we all have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to do the right thing, regardless of race. But I think you understand that there's an extra burden and responsibility placed on us when we get into these positions.
You're right.
So to be negligent in that duty and not carry it out, just carries extra disappointment to it.
Is that your suggestion, that I was negligent in those duties? Is that what you're saying?
That depends on what you recommended. But since you can't tell me what you recommended, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you didn't recommend anything, I would tell you yes. I'd be very disappointed. And I'd say that you were very negligent in your duties. If you recommended termination and arrest, my opinion might be different.
Okay.
But since you can't tell me what it was, I'm making a broader statement as one of the few. Because let me ask you this, at the time, how many African Americans were in the command staff?
In the senior command staff?
Senior
no,
command
it was
staff.
me.
Just you?
Yes.
So you were the one.
I was the one.
You were the only African American that was in the senior command staff.
Right.
And I know. I feel for the burden and the pressures, it's not lost on me that I'm sure you had to face as being the only African American male in that position.
Right.
So-
Both black and white.
And Representative, look, I appreciate your concerns. I'm not trying to limit your expression on this issue. I know it's important to you, but let's try and get it back onto what happened, facts, and
my
broader-
point is this. I think to evade the truth is something that is not only important as it relates to Ronald Greene, but as it relates to state police altogether, because what we're trying to do here is find the truth so that there is not another Ronald Greene. And I think not to express that, I would be negligent in my duties.
I understand. I'm trying to just keep it focused on
I
task.
understand. I'm fine right now. Thank you.
I'm certainly not going to accept the idea that you think I'm evading the truth, because that's not the case. I'll adamantly deny that.
Okay.
It's not the case.
Representative Bacala. Well, you're up now, Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, your recommendation would be recorded in the Internal Affairs database, would it not be?
I'm not sure that. I've never seen a recommendation recorded in the Internal Affairs. It very well may be. Yes, you're correct. It very well may be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm correct. So we'll check for that.
Okay.
One last question. Did the troop that you managed investigate this incident as a traffic death?
I don't know.
I don't know how you cannot know, sir.
Yeah, well, I don't. If I knew, I'd tell you.
All right. I yield.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative Villio. Representative Nelson. That's awesome. They keep leaving on me. Representative Marcel.
Just, I'd asked you earlier, did you make any recommendations? And you said you didn't recall?
Recommendations for what?
After you saw the video, did you make any recommendations? The one that you said was, you didn't call it disturbing. You said it was, everybody thought it was bad.
Terrible is what I said.
Terrible. I'm sorry. Yeah, terrible. Thank you. So you say you didn't make any, after you saw the terrible video, you didn't make any recommendations?
At that point, no, there was
Did you make
no
any requests
recommendations.
at all? Did you make any requests to anybody to do anything?
I don't recall any request that I made, other than it going to criminal investigations.
So you requested that it go to criminal?
No. Recommendations, if any.
You
There
recommend?
was no recommendation for discipline, but I agreed with everyone in the room that it probably need to go to criminal investigations.
Okay, so you have you in the past made any recommendations that there should be any discipline on other cases,
I'm sure, yes.
but not on this one that was terrible, right?
It's a trick question.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Why? It calls for the truth. You recognize it?
Do I recognize what?
What I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try it again.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, have you made any recommendations for people who have used use of force as officers in similar situation? You made any recommendations for them to be fired or anything else?
After any investigation, whether it be
Initially.
criminal investigation, no, you don't necessarily do that initially.
But you kind of
wait
haven't.
till you get all the factual information.
Right, but you kind of have it in your head once you've seen it because it's terrible that this guy should be fired. You know, because everybody wants their unit to be right. You want your officers to do the right thing, correct?
Correct.
So if you see a bad apple, then you would be the first one to say, we need to get rid of this guy. This is ridiculous,
Yeah,
right?
if he's a bad apple for sure. But I would also want to know all the facts before I just make a recommendation. Yeah, I may have something in my head,
Right.
but I'd like all the facts first.
Right, and I'm just asking you, did you didn't make any recommendations as it relates to that, to Ronald Greene, after you saw the terrible video? No request. No recommendations.
Other than it going to criminal investigations, I don't recall making any recommendations.
But
or
in the
requests.
past, you have made some.
I think we've established what happened.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Representative Nelson.
Hey, Major.
Yes, sir.
So I think you said earlier you were talking about what initiated the IA investigation to Trooper Hollingsworth, and you had said you saw some stuff on Facebook. Could you run through that really quick? I don't know if I was.
Well, I recall seeing, I think it was some photographs of Ronald Greene, the autopsy photographs, as it was identified, with shaved portions of his head, and there were C-like impressions in the side of his head. So looking at it, it was difficult to believe that was just a fist.
And so your impression up to that point, which I guess was in, that was in the fall of 2020. Is that accurate?
I would take your word for that. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, my impression is that the IA investigations were initiated about the fall of 2020 sometime. So it's like a year and a half after the actual incident.
Mm-hmm.
So your impression up to that point was that state police believed that he had been punched.
Yes, that's correct.
That was the general among everybody, was that he had been punched with a fist.
Yes, sir.
So I mean, my questioning on that would be in the autopsy report, right? So here's I know you just said you hadn't read it, but I would have hoped that somebody would have read it, right? So in the autopsy report, it specifically says, and this is, the day after he died, essentially, or day after he was killed, it says there were lacerations on the head inconsistent with motor vehicle collision injury. These injuries are most consistent with multiple impact sites from a blunt object. And I mean, I'm not saying that you're not telling the truth, but I think that at the end of the day, somebody you would have hoped would have looked at that autopsy report and seen those pictures before that time period, so that sometime in that intervening year and a half, we would have had that discussion of, hey, I think something else happened here, and this was not done by a fist.
And that discussion did not occur. That briefing did not occur. When I saw the photographs, that's when I learned that this may have been something more than just a punch to the head or punches to the head. That's when I learned. Now, regardless of what was going on in the investigative side, from the patrol side, this is when I learned that it appeared that it must have been something other than a fist.
And they were under your command at that time?
Who was that?
Was that Hollingsworth was under you at that time when you learned of that, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, there's not a normal procedure. I mean, I guess we've kind of talked about that, but there's not a normal procedure to say, hey, somebody is going to review the autopsy report. Somebody is going to look at this evidence and raise it to the command structure above these guys to say maybe something else should be done. That's because it seems like we said there's a criminal investigation. That seems to be the kind of the overarching why the delay occurred, was that there was a criminal investigation. And I think myself and the members of the committee, we kind of look at it and say there is a criminal piece of this that we have to look at. But at the same time, if you had somebody that, I mean, even if it wasn't murder or whatever, if it was just, excessive use of force or all these things, do you want that guy to continue to be out there, patrolling and doing all the stuff, interacting with the public, when or there's at least the allegation that might have occurred? And so it seems kind of crazy to me that, 6 months or a year and 6 months later, that was never raised, that nobody ever thought, hey, you know what, we should maybe look at the autopsy report and see what the coroner said about it. And so, my question to you would be, is there somebody whose job, I mean, the testimony that we've got before was, I think, Scott Davis. He said, I review all of these videos, and that was his job. He didn't know who he was supposed to report to. I think he raised some concerns, and it sounds like they didn't go anywhere. But he was just looking at the videos. He wasn't, I mean, outside of, I guess, criminal investigation was the only people that were really looking into it at that time. And there's no interaction between criminal investigation and kind of the actual command structure to recommend any of these things based on the other evidence that exists. Is that kind of what you're telling me?
That's usually correct. There's very little. I mean, there are updates when there are briefings if there's new information. But as far as me, I can tell you once again that I was unaware of him being struck in the side of the head with a flashlight until Hollingsworth actually admitted it, from what I understood.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Where did you see these autopsy photographs, by the way?
When?
No, where? Like,
I recall it was on Facebook. There was a Facebook post of these photographs.
really?
Yes.
We have not been able to get the supplemental autopsy report, so
Okay.
I'm just shocked that this
Surprised me too.
Do we ever figure out how this ended up on Facebook?
No, sir. I spoke with Doug Kane, because again, he was over public affairs, and they kind of usually stay on top of Facebook matters, social media. And once I advised him of that, I think he may have looked into it and reported it to the colonel and the chief, and from there, I'm not sure where it went.
Okay, and I know I've asked you this already, but I want to make sure I'm clear on it. When did you see the video for the first time? Do you remember the date of that?
Are you talking about the Hollingsworth videos?
Any video you saw of the incident?
If I'm not mistaken, within the first week or so of the incident.
Within the first week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At that meeting, you said Colonel Reeves was in the room. Had Reeves? Did you see it? Was Reeves seeing it for the first time when you saw it?
I'm not sure. I think so, but I'm not sure on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Marcel, for a very brief question.
Thank you. So, sir,
Yes.
you talked about the criminal investigation going on, and I was asking you, had you made any other recommendations for somebody to be terminated? You said not when you were, it was going to be a criminal investigation. You wouldn't make it immediately. So let me ask you something. A DWI, if an officer was involved in a DWI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be an ongoing criminal investigation also, right?
I don't think that would be a criminal investigation for state police. I think that's administrative
It's
investigation.
administrative? Okay.
Yes.
Do you recall Sheldon Perkins?
Yes.
Do you recall him being involved in the DWI?
Yes.
Do you recall what you did?
What do you mean what I did?
What you did when he was involved in the DWI? He was under your supervision.
What do you mean my recommendation?
Yeah, your recommendation, what was it?
After the, and I know Sheldon personally, so yeah. After the report was done by Internal Affairs, if I recall, and brought to the DRC, if I recall correctly, I think my recommendation was termination.
I think he was terminated, and I could be wrong,
I'm sorry?
but I think he was terminated immediately, Mr. Perkins, for DWI. But I
I
could
don't
be wrong.
recall
But
him being
I don't know.
terminated immediately, but
Okay, what about Michael Satcher? You remember him?
yes.
Okay, do you remember what your recommendation was on him and when that happened? Would that have been a criminal investigation as well, since he was charged with domestic abuse, battery, and kicking the door of his girlfriend and beating her up? Would that have been a criminal investigation also? Would you consider that as a criminal investigation?
Well, it's not for me to consider. I don't know if it was administrative or criminal. However,
I'm just trying to, I'm not trying to cut you off because he gave me only a second.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out what you consider as a criminal investigation and when you act and when you don't act. So, because in this incident, after it became public to the media, then he was terminated. So I'm just trying to figure out what the process is with state police. That's all I'm trying to get to.
yeah, it's my understanding that he resigned, or was he terminated?
Terminated.
Okay, I thought he had
Yes, sir.
resigned. I'm sorry.
You think maybe I did, but I thought he was terminated. But it hit the news. It had to hit the news first, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know Michael Satcher, so
Yeah, I'm sure you know all the troopers, right?
No,
You've
I
been there a
don't.
long time. You know a lot of them
I know
because
many
they've
of
been
them, but
under
I
your
don't know all of
command, right?
them. It's like 750 of them.
Right.
no, I
So you
don't.
know a lot of
Let's
them. Though.
keep
But
it
thank
back
you.
on task. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to find out did you know them and why they were terminated and others couldn't be terminated in this incident. That's all I'm trying to.
But I think you on Michael Satcher, you may want to check your facts. I think he was. I think he resigned.
Okay. We can look into that later. All right, thank you, Officer Oliphant.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
And final agenda item is Mr. Calvin Braxton. Oh, and before we do that, I do want to read into the record the fact that Mr. Dwyer has submitted statements into the record, and he did in the previous meeting as well, so they will be part of the record. All right, Mr. Braxton.
Yes.
Representative Villio for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good. Are we morning or afternoon? Probably afternoon, huh, Mr. Braxton? Good afternoon. You formerly served on the Louisiana State Police Commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, I think you probably served with a very good friend of mine, Lloyd Grafton.
Yes, sure did.
Sure. Mr. Braxton, in late May or early June 2020, did you in fact receive information relative to the in-custody death of Ronald Greene?
Yes.
Were you told that there was a possible cover-up regarding his death?
Yes.
And when you received that information, you were upset, angry, fair enough?
Correct.
Okay. Did you in fact then call the governor's office and relay that information in an attempt to expose the truth?
Not at that time, but I did later.
Okay. When later did you?
I wanted to vet it to see was any truth behind it before I would do it, because we was
Sure.
by being on the board, we was getting so many phone calls about things that was going on, and vet what was good, what not. And when I got to the point, then I made the call.
Can you tell me when that was and to whom did you speak and relay that information?
After I vetted it and found out that it was true, it was in early April or May of 2020.
And who did you speak with
I
at the
spoke
governor's
to
office?
a young lady named Val.
Val?
Yes, at the governor's office.
Do you know what Val's role was at the governor's office?
I knew her because from being around, I met her, and that's how I knew to call her. That was the person that I knew to call.
Fair enough. Did you ever speak with anyone else with the governor's office?
No, I did not.
Did you ever speak with Val subsequent to that to find out what she did with the information?
She passed it along and vetted it herself to see whether any truth was behind it, and before she would bring it to the governor. I thought it made sense after I heard it to get it in front of him, because I didn't want him to be blindsided at the time, and she did. She vetted it, and she contacted me back and told me that it was true.
And do you recall when she contacted you back?
Had to be 3 or 4 days probably after that. She called me back and told me.
And she indicated to you that she had relayed the information to the governor?
She had, what she told me was that she had contacted, I would assume after she got it vetted, that the governor had seen it, and she also indicated to me that after that, Reed was on his way over to the governor's mansion right then, after she found out that it was that it was true.
So this was sometime in early April or May 2020, and then 3 to 4 days later, Val contacted you back, said she had vetted it, and that Reeves was on his way to the governor's mansion. Is that pretty much it?
That's correct.
And you then called retired Lieutenant Bucky Millette and relayed the same information, true?
That's who vetted it for me before I brought it to the governor's office.
Okay, I suspect that might be. Now, who was the source that provided the information to you exposing the cover-up?
At this point in time, I don't want to divulge that due to the fact of things that are happening, that's happened to me. You got people that, I call them whistleblowers, that's getting brought out in public, tormented, and
fair enough, Mr. Braxton. I really I'm not looking to push you on that information, because I sincerely appreciate that you're here testifying in your honesty. And I don't know that that information certainly is not necessary for my purposes. So I'll certainly honor your request to keep that confidential at this time. On or about June 8th, 2021, I believe you learned that Mike Noel, who was the former chief of staff under Colonel Reeves, was going to be confirmed as chairman of the Gaming Control Board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you have some conversations with Senator Tarver with concern about the fact that Chief of Staff Noel would have been in charge in the 13 months of time for the Ronald Greene investigation?
That's correct.
And did you learn that Governor Edwards and Senator Tarver had a meeting ultimately that ended with Noel's resigning from the Gaming Control Board?
Yes.
Within that conversation, was there any mention of when the governor knew the additional facts about the in-custody death of Ronald Greene?
No.
Thank you. I yield. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Braxton.
To Mr. Braxton, I don't know if Barbilio covered this, but did you tell us exactly what you were told about the cover-up and then exactly what you relayed to the governor's office?
Oh, I got several, phone calls about the Greene incident, and what I did was I contacted Mr. Bucky Mier and asked him. He lived up in that neck of the woods. Did he know anything about that? And he said he didn't. And eventually, 2 or 3 days later, he double-checked and found out that it had happened. And one of the reasons why that I wanted to bring it to the attention of the governor, because it was getting ready to hit the news. And I just thought, being a friend and a person to contact somebody to let him know it was getting ready to hit the news, and to get out, kind of let him know to get in front of it. And lo and behold, 3 or 4 days later, it did hit the news.
So when you're talking about it hit the news, you mean talking about the videos and stuff like that it came out?
I don't know about the video, but the Greene incident was being.
And so what was the information that you actually, when you tried to relay, or you relayed to the governor's office, what did you actually tell them? You said Ronald Greene was a man and he was beat to death. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what exactly did you say?
That was similar to what I said to that he got beat and maybe he got killed while he was in the custody of the state police.
And did you mentioned you're talking about a cover-up, so you said, hey, there's specific people involved that are trying to stop this from coming out, or their leadership of state police is trying to stop this? Did you say anything about that, or you're just saying this incident happened and I'm aware of it and you should be aware of it too?
Correct. That's exactly the incident. There wasn't anything pertaining to a cover-up. It was just strictly to get in front of, to make you aware that this could be coming out, and be prepared.
All right. Thank you. Rep. Marcel.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Braxton. I think you just answered my question. I just want to know specifically, what did you tell the governor's office about what you had heard? And it was not about the cover-up. It was just about the incident, right?
That's correct.
And the fact that he may not have died as a result of the crash?
That's
correct.
that
a part of it, right?
That's correct.
And about the beating part of it, was that correct?
That's correct.
So you did let him know that?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Braxton.
Thank you.
Rep. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. I appreciate you coming here and testifying today. I just want a little more clarity myself, and I apologize. I may not have heard all of your testimony, but when did you learn about the Ronald Greene incident? May of
2020.
May of 20. All right. And shortly thereafter, you contacted someone in the governor's office?
Yes, I contacted Bucky Mier to vet it to see whether it's true or not, and then I made a contact to the governor's office.
And that would have been somebody named Val?
Correct.
All right. And then when Val, just so that we're clear, did Val say, again, what did Val tell you? Who did she say she reported it to?
She didn't tell me who she reported it to. She just called back and said that she found it, and that Reed was on his way over to the governor's office at that time.
All right. So he was on his way, Reeves was going his way to the governor's office.
Correct.
All right. I'm assuming to discuss what the information you had relayed.
That's correct.
All right. All right. Did you ever get any other follow up beyond that?
No.
All right. All right. Thank you. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. And to be clear, how'd you find out about this?
I had a phone call. Telephone call.
And look, I feel like I have to do my duty. You've had some issues with state police. Is that correct?
I've had a ton. I've been through 9 investigations with the Louisiana State Police. I have my family. It's been bad, and all because I want to do the right thing. And doing the right thing, if I collaborate, it costs me a lot of money. It's cost the state of Louisiana a lot of money. I have spent over $200,000 of my personal money fighting, not just the Louisiana State Police, J.D. Oliver that just left here, and the Louisiana Troopers Association.
How did you get on the commission?
I got appointed by Governor Gender.
Okay. And have you been successful in any of your litigation so far?
They have put me through the ringer. I was soon, the last time I counted was, I was told the state of Louisiana probably spent $600,000 on this case. At one point in time, I didn't have the dream team. The state of Louisiana at one time had 7 or 8 attorneys sitting in there with my one attorney negotiating this deal. We've tried to settle this deal. They've come twice.
You don't need to talk about sub discussions. I was just trying to get a status of where it is. I don't want to.
It's been a deal, and it's something that's simple that somebody did on a Facebook posting, and it's
we don't need to get into it. I'm just trying to.
Yes. Okay.
I'm trying to just make I'm trying to be fair with everybody and have a balanced committee as possibly as I can. And what was your motivation to contact the governor's office?
I thought with all the stuff that was going on with me, I knew him. Had conversations with him after he got elected, before he got elected, and I just thought, being the guy that I am, to give him a heads up to possibly let him know that this could be coming down the pipe and kind of be ready.
But you didn't talk to the governor himself?
I did not.
Okay. You just talked to somebody within the administration?
That's correct.
All right. Well, we don't have any other questions for you. We really do appreciate you coming.
Can I say one thing? Let me say this. The Louisiana State Police does a fantastic job. But what happened to me, but they do good work. And I will say there's a lot of them that was involved in my case, gone. So I just got to go forward. But I appreciate the time, and I don't have a problem in coming back if I need to come back. And thank you very much for your time.
We thank you. We thank you for coming today. All right, members, that concludes our agenda items for the day.